as we have seen earlier, that there were certain factors that facilitated Britain to become the place which received the first phase of industrial revolution. So these were the factors that made Britain appropriate to become the first place that received this particular wave of industrial revolution. And these factors have already been discussed. But these were not the only factors that made Britain the epicenter of change. So for that, we will have to move on and see what were the other factors that promoted this kind of a change. So let's see what these factors were. So my first question to you is, do you recognize this picture right here? What is this picture? That is exactly right. It is a train. But this is not, the trains that we see nowadays, right? Of course, you can understand that this is a steam engine from the steam that is being emitted from this particular engine. Now, we have discussed that all these goods were being manufactured in bulk. But where were these goods going and how were these goods exactly being transported? So in this sort of question, we get the answer through this engine, which was the steam engine. This steam engine changed the course of history, and not only did it change the way locomotives would function, it also changed the way industries would function, because this became the major source for power to the industries. So this picture is of the steam engine drawn locomotive, which was first of its kind at that point of time, and steam engine became a direct consequence of various industries that were growing, especially that of iron. Why? Because the iron industries became the backbone for all of these machine creations, because iron industries would produce the parts for these machineries. So these parts for the steam engine was also produced by the iron factories. Now this steam engine itself for the locomotive was created by James Watt. It was invented by Watt in 1769. So what exactly James Watt did was, he sort of advanced the steam engine itself. The way Newcomen had established it, James Watt brought forward a sort of advanced feature in this new steam engine in 1769. And this, as we were discussing, had become one of the primary power source that drew the locomotives as well as the industries. Because primarily we know that hydraulic power was being used, wind energy was being used, but these were not really reliable resources that would sort of back the large scale production that was happening at that point of time. So we see that steam engine was being used to power these industries, these large factories, as well as the locomotives like that of the railways and ships. So can you tell me who invented the steam engine? Was it Thomas Alva Edison, John Macadam, George Stephenson, or James Watt? That is correct, it was James Watt. Was of course an advanced version of the steam engine. Now Watt constantly kept working on his steam engine, and he kept developing it bit by bit. Now this right here is an illustration that is showing the way Watt envisioned the steam engine, he drew the steam engine, and this became Watt's specification of the steam engine in 1782, and this is how it finally looked. Now let me ask you a simple question. What is the easiest mode of communication for you? Isn't it the roads that you avail? Right. But these roads that we use nowadays is not exactly the way they were, right? And there were a story behind it. What is it? Now we have seen that England and especially Britain has, a very important geographical position, because it is situated, amongst these water bodies, right? And it could access all sorts of transportation. So all modes of transportation could thrive in England. Now, there reached a point of time when these roads that were in use became really fragmented, and they were, not in a position to be used anymore. So, of course, we then realized that there will be a change, there will be inventions and innovations even in the sector of transport and communication, because all these goods that were being produced in bulk will have to be transported to different places. That is when the picture of the new roads come in. And this creation, this innovation was done by John Macadam. So John Macadam, what he exactly did was he changed and he changed the pattern of the way roads were, making them inexpensive firstly, and of course accessible vastly to the people. So we see that he invented the roads that were being built. So this new technique in which it was being built by coal tar, which resulted in a more permanent structure, hard and strong roads. So permanent sort of a structure of the road. And these roads came to be known as macadamized roads, being taken from his name. So these roads were of course, functional greatly in Great Britain, United States, France, as well as Canada.
We saw how the steam engine got prominence, but in order to function, it needed a complex system of railway lines and railway system that it could function on. Now, it is important to understand that this railway system or the railroads gained immense importance eventually when George Stephenson introduced the railway system or the railroads. So we see that the railroads gathered importance after the first railway system was invented, which could carry bulk materials through long distance and less time. Now, in order to take the produced materials from the mother country to even the colonies, these railroads were important. It was important for communication. Thus we see how the invention of the railroads and the railway system brings in the factor of smooth communication. We have also seen that waterways was always a very important factor for Britain to flourish. It again sort of received a push and impetus when new systems of canals, waterways, steamboats and steamships were being developed at that point of time. So systems, through water transportation that were developed essentially allowed smooth flow of goods from one place to another, as well as imperialism to prosper. So it allowed the imperialistic ideas to be promoted, to be taken from one place to the other. So we see that the canal transportation system became more and more important, and steamships and steamboats also came into the limelight. Now, due to these improvements in transportation system, the task of colonizing foreign lands also became easier and most importantly faster. So these sort of systems in transportation and modes of communication revolutionized the system of transportation that linked markets and economies. and maximize trade. So of course, this was a revolutionary change because the transportation system would now link one market to the other, take lesser time to move from one market to the other, which would of course give a push to the growth of economy because trade was becoming easier and had maximum potential now to develop. So we see that this maximized amount of trade led to higher growth of factories. Why? Because the more the trade, the more the demand, there has to be more amount of supply to fulfill that demand, right? So as trade was increasing, factories also started to grow higher in number, right? And these were producing goods and allowing these goods and materials to flow from one place to the other. That is how the system of transportation was revolutionized by these inventions. So we have come across all these factors which were essentially how the the existing systems were being made smoother and smoother for these goods and materials to flow. But here there is a major factor which essentially provided Britain with a push, and not only a push, a support to grow. That is that of the British policies. The British progressive policy was something that backed Britain from the very beginning. Now, you know the fact that, a government or a country can only flourish when its people, are flourishing, the trade is flourishing, and all of the factors in the society are flourishing. Now, what do you think sort of makes this boom to take place, right? This can only happen when the government comes up with the policies that are friendly to the societal structures, that give a push to the people to move ahead and do trade, bring in economies, do more amount of export and import. And that could only be possible when the policies were progressive in nature. So the policies that Britain was, establishing at that point of time, the government policies that were administering these changes, provided a great push to the amount of trade that was happening and new ideas that were arriving at that point of time. So we see that the policies essentially were oriented towards the idea of empire building, commerce and trade. So empire building is because British was at that point of time trying to expand its empires through the means of colonization. Now, these progressive policies included that of Navigation Act, because ships were, so important, their water systems were so important, that Navigation Acts by the government was very, very important, which would give these ships that were trading, that were, moving ahead for commercial purposes, a protection from the pirates. At that point of time, we have seen that the waterways were exploited by the pirates and they had become an integral part of it. But there were no real policies that could stop the pirates from attacking these, genuine commercial ships that were, moving ahead for trade. Now, when these Navigation Acts was passed by the British government, we see that it provided a protection to these ships. So here we can see the two pictures. One is the Royal Navy fighting with the pirate ships, and the other one is of course black flag, which is the pirate flag, and then there is the flag of Britain fighting it. So then apart from the factors that we had discussed earlier, these factors that we saw, whether it was the invention of steam engine, whether it was the innovation of machinery, mode of communication, mode of transportation, the various government policies, the British policies that were coming out at that point of time, these factors also provided an impetus, a push for Britain to flourish during this point of time and to take the first wave of industrial revolution. Thus, we see that all these factors that we have discussed, which were geopolitical as well as economic factors, which provided Britain a backing, to become the epicenter of change. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at DeltaStep.com or download the DeltaStep app to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly, learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it is rewarding too. So register for free now.